Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Living Philosophy. Today's episode, I want to talk about the feminist story that was kind of buried in the Brothers Grimm fairy tale. It's actually the first one in the Brothers Grimm, called The Frog Prince. And the version of this is quite famous. It's the princess kisses the ugly frog and he turns into a prince. But that's not the original version of the story. And I think the thing that's been changed is actually very telling. And I think there's maybe something important for the psychology of women and the relations between men and women within that change. And maybe it's been Disneyfied in a way that isn't desirable. So today I'd like to explore the psychology of that, the change that was made by the Grimm brothers in the mid-19th century, and how that might play out psychologically in the way we look at the story today. So I'd like to start by giving just a brief overview of the story, in case it's probably been a while since you've heard the story. So the story begins with the young princess, and she's walking outside the castle, and she's playing with her golden ball, and she's throwing it up in the air, and she gets lost in it, and then she loses grip. She loses it, and it bounces and falls into this deep dark well. And she is distraught. She's heartbroken. She's tearing her hair out. She's wondering, how can I get the golden ball back? Oh my God, I'd give anything. I'd give my clothes, I'd give my title, I'd give my jewels, if only I could have my golden ball back. And that's when this creepy little frog emerges from the well. And he says, "Hey, princess," and he says, "What's going on?" And she says, "No, I've just lost my golden ball. I can't get it. It's at the bottom of the well. I don't know what to do. I'd give anything to have it." And he says, "Well, I'll get it for you if you treat me like your companion." And she says, "Yeah, sure, whatever it takes to get the golden ball. Yeah, sure." And so the frog goes into the lake, and of course into the well, and of course, being a creature of the water, he can dive right down, and he retrieves that golden ball, and he brings it up. He gives it to the princess, and she's delighted, and she's staring at it, and she starts walking away, and he's like, "Hey, princess, you said, the deal," and she's just like, "Whatever, frog," and she goes home, back to her castle. And then the next day, she's there at the table in the castle, and she hears these steps coming up the entrance to the castle. Splish, splash, splish, splash. And then she hears a big bang, bang, bang rapping on the door. And she's like, "Oh no." And the king is like, "Who's that?" And she's like, "Oh, it's this frog. And she explains what happened, and the king says, "Well, you have to honor it. You made a promise, and you have to honor that promise. Let the frog in." So she lets the frog in, and he comes over to the table, and he says, "Pull me over a chair." So she pulls him over a chair, and he's like, "I want to eat off that golden plate with you. Bring me over to your food." And so they eat off the thing, and he's like, after the dinner, then he's like, "I'm tired, princess. I want to go to your little bed." And it's creepy, right? So she takes him upstairs, and she's just disgusted by him at this point. And this is where the myth gets a bit different. So in the version that we have, the Disneyfied version, so this was changed in the mid-19th century, and in it now the princess kisses the frog she's disgusted with, and he transforms into the beautiful prince that she always dreamed of, and she's only too happy to honor the promise of being his companion. But what happens in the original 1812 version of the myth, in the version that the Brothers Grimm originally collected, is that she goes upstairs and she says, "Screw sharing the bed with you." She takes the frog and she lobs him off the wall, and he splats and turns into a prince. And he explains how someone had put a curse on him until blah blah blah. So it's the same thing, except instead of kissing the frog, she throws him off the wall. So that's the story. But let's just dig into the symbolism of a few of these elements, and see what the overall meaning of it might be. And I think this is obviously the story of a young woman. And if you look at the golden ball in a book called Iron John, the poet Robert Bly, who does a whole symbolical unraveling of this other Brothers Grimm myth, and he explores the idea of the golden ball. Because in that story, the prince drops it into the cage where the wild man is, and the wild man won't give him back the ball until he lets him out of the cage. And in this story, we see the princess throwing the golden ball up, and it consumes her mind and her energy, and she adores it. And the way Robert Bly explores the symbol, or explains the symbol, is he says it's the golden ball is the symbol of wholeness. Now, a ball is obviously the spherical thing. It's whole, it's complete, it's perfect in some sense. And the gold holds the same thing. So the fruit of alchemy at the end is the philosopher's stone, is the thing that can create gold out of anything, is the permanence of gold. And so the gold has that symbol of wholeness and purity and perfection, because it was the only metal known in history that didn't decay over time. So the symbolical connotations of perfection and purity attached to it. So you've got this double symbol of the gold and the ball, and he ascribes it the value of childhood, of that sense of being unbroken. It's before the fall, and you are whole, and you are playing with the golden ball, and there's no sense of loss or of incompleteness. And what happens in the case of our princess is the ball goes into this deep, dark well. And what is the well? Well, that is, the water is the symbol of the unconscious, and the deep darkness of the well is almost like the depth of a personal unconscious. And so she goes down to explore, her golden ball is lost in the depths of that personal unconscious, in the depths of that well, in the depths of that, what we might call, this is her Eden moment. This is her encounter with the incompleteness, with the fall, with the loss of wholeness that we all experienced in adolescence. That you lose the wholeness and the completion of being a child, because you start to gain the responsibilities of more of being an adult, but also the social nexus, the awakening of sexual instincts. All of this changes the way we are in the world and our relationship to the tribe. And so that is the golden ball getting lost in the deep dark well. And we can't go down there. And so what is the princess to do? She's lost, she's bewildered, she's just in a state of chaos. And this masculine, disgusting frog comes over. And if you think about the way that kids talk about the other sex, it's often like that, like, oh no, it's disgusting, they boys talk about girls that way, and girls talk about boys that way. And so there's that sense of the frog as being this repulsive thing, but then he retrieves the golden ball for her. And so we see that perhaps a symbolical thing going on there is it's the effect that the other sex has on us as teenagers. We feel that sense of completeness again. It gives us back that golden ball. We feel like in love there is something that makes us whole again. And yet there's this whole other aspect of it. There's the implications of the frog being the one to reclaim it. And so she goes back home, and the frog comes to the house. And now she's got this guy sticking around, and she's got to entertain that frog in order to maintain that wholeness, in order to honour her agreement in that. And so you could look at this as maybe some version of the courting, of the connection with someone, of getting past the initial repulsion with the frog, because what we're seeking is the wholeness, is that sense of feeling complete. And that's probably what drives us to love in the first place, is the feeling of a lack, the feeling of wanting to feel complete. And you see that in songs and poems, and yeah, as people just feel, they say that even in common tongue, that she makes me whole, he makes me whole. It's about completeness. And so in this context, we look at the end point, and you've got this princess who's stuck with a frog, and the frog might even just be the repulsive aspects of masculinity. It might be the fact that women, well, yeah, okay, let's mirror it over onto another thing that often the nice guys think that, you know, the typical guy who's in the friend zone thinks, oh, if only she could see how perfect I am, but she's only attracted to these assholes. And so that could be the fatal attraction. Only the assholes can get the golden ball from the bottom of the well. So maybe it's those frogs, but how do those frogs become princes? And the myth that we've been fed for the last 150 years is by kissing them. And if you kiss enough frogs, then you'll find your prince. And that mightn't be a helpful thing, you know, because what does that emphasize in a woman? It tells her to become more feminine, to become more yielding, to become entirely feminine, and to just yield to whatever the frog wants, and you'll get what you want. You'll get that golden ball, you'll get that. And it's crack shit, really, isn't it? That idea of just giving into those. And you kind of see that in even the images of, I'm watching a 1950s detective series called Perry Como, watching a few episodes of that this week, and it's really interesting how women are portrayed as such almost histrionic creatures. They break down into emotions so quickly and into tears so quickly, and they're so fragile, and we don't really see that as, like, this was extreme, like this was really wow. And whatever about the portrayal of women, I think certainly the portrayal has gotten stronger and stronger in the last few decades, but it was amazing to look back that far and to be like, wow, that's such a different perception of women. And that fits with that idea of the frog prince as this repulsive thing, and the way you turn the frog into a prince is by kissing it and giving into that femininity. But I like that old 1812 version. I like the original version where how does the frog become a prince? Well, how does a woman become whole? And it's by integrating masculine qualities. It's by becoming aggressive. It's by taking that frog, by not taking his shit, by tossing him against the wall so he splurges and turns into a prince. It's by pushing back. It's by having boundaries and saying no further. And I think that that's a much more helpful lesson to give to young women, is to have boundaries, not to just let someone walk all over you, not just to take that, but to push back, to assert yourself, to assert when it's too much. And out of that challenging of someone, we give them the chance to become a prince, to go, oh, with there, I'm not actually like that. And so it's got the potential for a transformation in interpersonal relations between the sexes. And I think just as Iron John is a very helpful myth for men in coming of age, I think that this Frog Prince story is helpful for women. Even just the fact that it was changed, to see the different implications of those changes, I think is a very fascinating thing for the feminine psychology. And yeah, that's all I have to share with you on the Frog Prince for today. I'm sure there's much more we could go into with it, but yeah, I just found that alteration from 1812 quite interesting, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, as ever, please subscribe if you haven't already, and give the video a thumbs up, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And otherwise, I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.